February of 1980, when I was 13 years old, my world was turned upside down. We had to leave our home in the middle of the night because our life was in danger. My mother's job moved us to the United States along with 5 other families that worked in the same company. And we settled in California. I started middle school and ESL classes and started my life there. But I remember one day walking to one of my classes, and this boy came up to me and punched me in the stomach and said, "Go back to Mexico." I said to myself, I was in shock, but then I thought, but I'm not from Mexico. I didn't know at that time why he said those things and why he seemed so angry. Within the year, thank God, I was out of middle school and I was out of ESL, but I wasn't proficient enough to move on to the next level, which was high school. And my first 2 classes were particularly difficult for me. My first class was English, reading, and every time I had to stand up in front of the class to read, the kids would taunt me. They would say, "What are you saying?" and laugh. My second period wasn't any better. So I decided not to go to those 2 classes. And I would show up at third period. I would write notes that excused my being late. I would say I was sick, I had a doctor's appointment, anything to not be tortured every day. Well, one day, I get called to the principal's office. And to my surprise, my mother was sitting there. The principal looked at me and said, "Now, I'm 40 years old, and I never seen somebody as sick as you." He then turned to my mother and said, "Mrs. Evans, did you sign these notes?" And inside I was like, "Oh, please save me." But my mom said, "No, I never seen those. I knew I was going to get it when I got home." So I got sent to Saturday detention for a few weeks, which meant I had to go clean the school and pick up trash from the football fields with the other delinquents. I served my sentence, but I always wondered why nobody asked me, "Why didn't you go to class? Why did you do it?" Oh well. So then, later on, I went to see my counselor, guidance counselor, and I told him that I wanted to go to college. He looked at me straight at my face and said, "You're not going to college." So I did finish high school, I graduated. I went to college, community college, but I didn't know what I wanted to do, and I had no support. So I dropped out. Time went on, and my friends were graduating from college, were getting married, their life was moving on. But I felt stagnant. I had to do something. I thought to myself, I needed to move on. At the time, my sister was in the Air Force, and they gave her orders to come to Washington, D.C. So I thought, I'm going to come with her, even though I was very scared, and I needed to spread my wings and start my life. My sister drove us across country in her little Honda del Sol 2-seater convertible with the top down most of the time in a very hot summer. And I didn't know how to drive stick shift, and I did try, but the car kept going like this, so she said, "Never mind, I'll do it." And we managed to cross the country to the East Coast without killing each other. Once we moved here, I settled, and I went back to school and got a job. In the mid-90s, the Indo-Chinese Community Center got a grant from the Office of Refugee Resettlement to give services to the newest or latest wave of Vietnamese refugees that were coming to the DC area, Mount Pleasant neighborhood. A coworker asked me if I would like to volunteer helping refugee children, teaching them English. And I didn't think twice. I said, yes, I want to do it. And I went to the recruiting meeting, and I guess I passed. So I got to volunteer for that whole summer. When the summer ended, Sandy, the director, wanted me to stay on as a part-time employee. And I was teaching English as a second language to kids after-school program. The next summer came along, and we were teaching out of the old Lincoln Middle School, which was in Mount Pleasant. This school was pretty old. It had no air conditioner. My classroom was long, and I remember having panel windows on this big blue wall, and in each corner there was long closets with double doors. One day, it was particularly hot, and it was muggy. I wasn't feeling very well about myself. I was bummed. When I show up to my classroom, there was no one there. And I thought, great, that's all I need. The kids don't want to be here. As I looked down to the floor, disappointed, the closet doors flew open, and I hear the kids yell, "Surprise!" And they all come running towards me to hug me. They almost toppled me to the floor. It was like the most amazing feeling. I knew I fell in love with those kids at that time. I went on to stay with the organization for a few years. I immersed myself in their culture. I celebrated holidays, Lunar New Year's. I spent my Saturdays with other volunteers. We took the kids out to museums and field trips and had a lot of fun. I even had a dance troupe where I prepared kids to perform cultural dances at different events. Always, when it was time for my then boyfriend, now husband, and I to take them home, they would argue of who will get dropped off last or first. So Song Lu was always upset because he always got dropped off first. Well, in order for us to provide better services to the youth, we became our own organization, Asian American LEAD, Leadership, Empowerment, and Development for Youth and Families. I was the first full-time staff, and at one point, I was the only non-Vietnamese staff. But I never felt like I always felt welcome. I never felt like I didn't belong. They were my family, my tribe. I belonged. With the time I spent with Asian American LEAD, I got to witness many youth get the support and mentoring that they needed from mentors and staff. A lot of them went to excellent universities, and they live successful lives. I have been able to go to some of those kids' weddings. I have met their babies, and I still see them from time to time. That makes me very happy. But most of all, I am grateful that Sandy believed in me and welcomed me into her tribe. And this was the place I wish I had when I came to this country. Thank you.